Hi everyone, so I am Althea Kim Dichu, and today I will be the reporter and gonna present to you all about language and gender. So we have the agenda. First we're gonna tackle about the definition of language. Next is the definition of gender, distinction between sex and gender. Also gendered language, and I also provided some examples about gendered language. And next is why is there inequality between language and gender, and also theories that could prove that there is relationship between language and gender, and also the inequality happen. So, what is language? So, according to Zad in 1975, language is a systematic tool for conveying ideas or feelings by using agreed signs, sounds, gestures, or signs that contain understandable meanings. So now we're gonna define gender and sex so that we can find their difference. Okay, sex is usually categorized siya about the biological attributes, which is the female or male, while gender refers to socially constructed roles, behaviors, and expression identities of girls, women, boys, men, and gender diverse people. So after that, we define the gender and then language. Now, what is gendered language? So, gendered language is any language na naka-carry siya of bias or discrimination towards that specific sex or gender. Language and gender inequality. So, in using some gendered language can often lead to inequality between certain sex or gender, which can result in harmful stereotypes which cause discrimination and portray a negative view of a certain gender. So we all know that in our history, women did not have the same rights with men. So also in language or by the use of gendered language, na po nahitabo na inequality between the men and the women. So we will gonna give some examples with that. Okay, one of the example is the Mr. and Mrs. We all know that the men, they are called Mr. whether they are single or married, while the women, they are called Miss when they are not married or they are single, and they are called Mrs. when they are married, diba? So there is some difference about ang ginatawag sila. So that was we call gendered language. So it seems like they see this as a problem because women realize or their lives are defined only by the relationship they have with men. So throughout the history, the women's role in society has been closely associated her marital status, which is why women use different titles. Next is the gender biased job titles. So, even in job titles, nahitabagay pa na gender bias through the language that they use. So, like the policeman, fireman, postman, chairman, and cameraman. We all know that in the end of the word, naay man, which is directly pointing to sa lalaki. So, naay bias nga nahitabo between the men and the women. Like there was a clearer division between the men and the women. So okay, now gender differences in language use. It has been argued that men and women use language in different ways, which reflects how they view themselves in society and how others perceive them. A variety of theories have been developed by linguists to study the views that men and women use language. This allows us to gain a deeper understanding of possible similarities and differences between genders through the language used in conversation. So, there are some linguists or theorists na naga-offer or naga-ingon sila nga possible na similarities and differences ang ginagamit na language between the men and the women. First is the difference theory. So the difference theory simply aims to prove that men and women do speak in different ways, but this does not mean that one way is better than the other. A supporter of this theory is Deborah Tannen. In her book, You Just Don't Understand 1990, Tannen explores these differences. Below is a summary of her findings. There are distinctions between men and women. Si men daw see communication as a competition to gain status, while women communicate to gain the support of others. And also, men are more independent, while the women are more dependent. Men is trying to fix problems, but women is trying to find sympathy from others. Men talk briefly about facts, and then women talk lots about their feelings. And then the men are more direct with and give demands, while the women are more indirect and give suggestions. And then men more likely to express opinions and argue against others, while women less likely to cause conflict. Next theory is dominance theory. So, dominance theory has idea that the language na ginagamit sa lalaki is superior and holds more dominance in society rather than sa babae. So, supporter of this theory include the linguists such as Don Zimmerman and Candice West, Pamela Fishman, and Dale Spender. So, in 1975, si Zimmerman, si West, nag-conduct sila og study nga ginatitled nila Sex Role, Interruptions and Silences in Conversation katong 1975. Sa ilang study, nag-record sila 31 ka mga tao nga conversation between each other and then between the men and women. So, there are findings about silang study. In the findings, men spoke more in general, interrupted women more, didn't let women speak, responded to women in a minimal and delayed way, rarely interrupted other men. So, klaro nga they hold dominance or authority over the women. So, women were silent more and for longer periods of time and only interrupted other women, not men. So, gina-interrupt lang sa mga babae is ang kapwa nila babae and they were silent, mas silent sila. Next is the deficit theory. So, this theory proposed by Otto Jespersen and Robin Lakoff. So, they are the supporters of this theory. So, they see in that language na ginagamit sa lalaki is seen as the standard jud nga language rather than women, because they say that language na ginagamit sa mga babae is insufficient, weak, ana. So, below are some of the findings from Otto Jespersen's book, Language, Its Nature, Development, and Origin in 1922. Na yung findings. Okay. So, sa findings niya about the women, it talk a lot, use simpler words as they have smaller vocabularies, use more full starts and unfinished sentences because they speak before they think, exaggerate more, use too many adjectives and adverbs, are emotional, not grammatical, are more indirect, so are not as effective as men. So, according to their findings, grabe jud ka emotional ang babae when it comes in using their language. So, I think that's one of the reason why they say na insufficient or weak ang language na ginagamit sa babae. Next is the findings about the men. So, they have the larger vocabularies and use more difficult words and also are in charge of establishing new words in the English language. So, below are some of the findings upon from Robin Lakoff's book, Language and Women's Place, 1975. So, that's why the deficit theories say that the women daw have the weak ang ginagamit nilang language because they use back channeling which is yeah, like nga mga word hedging, sort of, kind of, intensifiers, very, so, apologies, I'm sorry, but tag questions, you live here, right? You sing, don't you? Modal verbs, could, should, ought to, tas imperatives, why don't we? Indirect command, it's called in here, indirect means close the window, diba? Like, dili sila direct dahil maka-express sa lahang commands or everything. And then, mga pet names, gagamit ang mga girls of pet names like honey, sweetie, darling. So, that's why ngun nga weak ang paggamit sa mga ang language na ginagamit sa babae. Next is the diversity theory. This theory argues that there is a difference between sex and gender. It's because sex is assigned at birth, so does not affect the language we use. Instead, the rules that we have in society and the way we interact with others influence the language that we use. It is the supporter of this theory is Deborah Cameron and Judith Butler. So Deborah Cameron believes that difference is a myth. Her research takes inspiration from contemporary theories to challenge the idea that men and women use different language. She thinks that the differences in gender are because of the expectations placed on us by society. She coined the term verbal hygiene in her 2012 book of the same name to refer to the ways in which people think they are supposed to speak in order to fit into the norm and meet the expectations of a correct society. So, akong gi-provide na ang mga key takeaways about the topic language and gender, nga there is relationship talaga that the language we use towards the gender. So, sometimes misuse na to ang mga language or term natang ginagamit. That's why nahitabo nga inequality between men and women, and yun naman ay talagang inexplain why someone points or why someone nga kaingon sila nga na inequality between the languages because of those theories and mga linguist pod na nagsupport ni ana nga study. If you want to learn more, just visit these references for more information. So I hope that you learned something from my report. Thank you for listening and God bless.